Hey, what's up, YouTube? Red and Bordy here. Today, we are going to break down the musket, the changes that were made in the March update. This was a request in our last video, so if you want to point out what weapon you want to see next when we break down the changes, leave a comment down below. Dude, I'm ready for this, man. The musket's one of my favorite weapons in New World, so you ready to hop in here?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited to see what you have to say about it because you used the musket way more than I did during the preview. I have a little bit of experience with it, but not as much as you. So this will definitely be an interesting one, man.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to, I felt like the musket was definitely a weaker weapon. It requires a lot of skill just for it to be average. So we will see the changes and see if maybe we think that might be different now. So the first bullet point here, Bordy, is most passives across both mastery lines have been updated to be more conditional and unique. They removed the 1.5 zoom passive and kept the sniper 3x zoom ultimate. We also balanced the zoom level to fit with the default field of view and added a permanent headshot damage modifier to the passive. Bordy, this is good, I think, because, again, the musket has such a high skill ceiling or even a floor because, to land these are hit scans, so it's a little bit easier than the bow. But it's pretty punishing if you miss your shots with the musket.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to see that they're adding things like the permanent headshot damage modifier to these passives because you should be rewarded, just like we talked about in our last video about the bow changes. The skill to use these ranged weapons in New World is rather high, so they do need to add some things like permanent headshot damage to make them worth using. Otherwise, the risk isn't worth the reward whenever you use these ranged weapons like this. So you like to see things like that added. Yes.
The sniper, the 3x zoom ultimate, that's an interesting choice for the I guess you would call it the pinnacle skill. I think each skill tree has one where you get, you have to spend at least over half of your skill points to get access to. 3x zoom is pretty important, a pretty good passive. I think most people using the musket will push down to get that passive there. So a slightly sped up standard musket reload time. They removed the gun butt melee attack to prevent it from interfering with hip firing or reloading. So Bordy, this is interesting because now there's no more melee. You actually do a hip fire at close range.
Yeah, which I'm a little bit on the fence about that. I guess I didn't use the musket, like I said at the beginning of the video, quite as much as you did. So I'm assuming there was some interference whenever someone came close with either hitting with the butt of the gun or reloading or shooting or hip firing. Maybe those things didn't react as intended. So maybe you would hit with the butt of the gun whenever you were intending to reload or vice versa. I'm not real sure. Is that kind of how it played out? Because to me, I would like to have a melee with the musket. I like that idea. I like being able to hit someone with it if they get close, and then being able to switch to my other back bar weapon if it's a melee weapon, to be able to use a melee weapon whenever they are close to me. So I'm not real sure about that one. If there was some sort of issue they couldn't get resolved, then this is obviously a good change.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit cumbersome when you were trying to reload when someone was in melee range. You actually, it would just like make you restart if you ever did a melee attack, which could be pretty frustrating. But I think that's the point of having multiple weapon slots, is to have like a melee weapon with your musket, right? So then, your musket can hip fire, but more than likely the most optimal thing to do would be to switch to your melee weapon at that point. So I think overall it's a good change. But like you said, I think there was like an internal problem with reloading and stuff, so they changed it to take the butt melee out of the game. So they removed sacrifice.
Yeah. So what about sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I know that the one before that, speeding up the musket reload time, I think is pretty good too. It says slightly, but I know that in the preview that was kind of an issue for you too, because it was very slow to reload, and I remember that being one of your complaints. So what do you think about that they're speeding up the standard musket reload time?
Well, so there was an exploit in the preview event that allowed you
to. Now, Red, you didn't use that.
Okay,
you didn't.
Maybe not exploit, right? It's an animation cancel. There we go. That sounds more friendly. There was an animation cancel. But obviously that's not in the game anymore, so they sped up the overall reload time. And that's one of the problems, Bordy, because the musket doesn't do any like extreme amount of damage. I'd say it's on par, or was on par, with the fire staff and the bow. As far as like your basic attacks go, there weren't any abilities that really did a ton of damage. You could like do your power shot or whatever, but that was just an ability you could use every once in a while. So you start to add in like poor reload time and then high skill difficulty, and I think that's where the musket kind of landed in the like probably like low tier of weapon. So I think the changes we've seen so far, which is the increase in reload speed and the change of the abilities to make it have a passive increase in headshot modifier, I think are both really good changes to get the musket up to the rest of the ranged weapons.
Yeah, I would agree.
So they removed sacrifice as an ability that triggers on death or 2 situational. That was the ability that you dropped bombs when you died. And I agree here, you don't ever want to build your character around dying. So I'm glad that they took that out, adding something more fun, or at least more usable. They made the sharpshooter tree passives focus more on ranged combat and greatly rewarding accuracy by providing more benefits for headshots and consistently hitting targets. This is on the same path as what we were talking about earlier, dude. And, rewarding high skill play by, increasing damage with consecutive shots landed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great change, in my opinion, for these ranged weapons in New World. They did a lot of this for the bow too, and it looks like they're kind of reworking the musket to be the same way, which is really good, man. They're realizing that the skill gap there is pretty high, so you should be rewarded whenever you land shots, especially whenever you're hitting multiple shots in a row, and that's what it sounds like is happening here. If you're consistently hitting targets, then it seems like you're going to get rewarded through some sort of passive.
And I want to point out that one of the things that made range weapons viable in the preview event was the life staff speed of light ability, allowing you to create space and create gaps. So that's no longer in the game. I think that's important to point out, because one of the most important things in a range build in most MMOs is the ability to kite, right? And so, that's, hopefully we're going to have to look in tree to get some abilities that allow us to create space as ranged weapon users. But I think we'll see some that they did do that with the bow. Let's see if they do that with the musket as well. So they made the trapper tree passive focus more on movement and debuffing targets to allow for more options when there are closer enemies. So that's, again, Bordy, interesting. There were traps in the preview event, and I think there's going to continue to be traps, Bordy, during the trapper tree line.
Yeah, I thought the traps were pretty cool, man. I did use those some, and they were pretty fun to use. It reminds me of like a Caitlyn type of build in League of Legends. She has traps in there, and that kind of reminded me a little bit of that. And I like that mechanic in the game. I think it's a pretty neat mechanic.
Yes, and to the same point of trying to create space, it does help musket users keep people from wanting to go into melee range, right? If those traps are punishing enough as far as like CC or damage goes, people will think twice before they step into the melee range of a musket user. Yeah. So here's the first ability, Bordy. Power Shot. It isn't new. It was in the preview event. Slightly increased damage of Power Shot to make it stand out more from the other overload shots. And because the shots can no longer carry over into all shots of shooter stance. This is important, Bordy. This is something that did allow you to increase your DPS. It was more applicable in PvE. But if you hit your power load shots during your shooter stance, which allowed you to rapid fire your musket, you got the benefit of your power shot, and that's no longer the case.
Yeah, which seems really OP, right? That seems like that would be incredibly strong. So it's probably a good thing that they removed that.
Right. Well, I mean, yes and no. Because I'm not sure the musket needed any nerfs at this point. It was really good in PvE, and maybe that's why they did nerf that is because it was more applicable in PvE, and it was like a pretty massive amount of damage in a short amount of time. So
Yeah, and I think it wasn't shooter stance that made you your mobility was none. You couldn't move, right, when you were in shooter stance.
Yeah, basically you were tied to the same position, but you gained reload speed, and you gained the benefit of any of your power shot passives, which is pretty powerful, man.
Yeah.
So they removed the upgrade to speed up the loading of power shot and made it the default low speed for overloaded shots. So here we go, Bordy. Another hint or nod towards increasing the reload speed of the base weapon without having to use the animation cancel. Right. So Powder Burn is the next ability. Replace Play Dead with Powder Burn, an alternative shot to load into the musket that does initial damage upon hit and sets the target on fire for burning damage over time. Now, me and you both kind of like damage over time as a warlock and a whatever you played in UO, bleedy axe guy. You like damage over time, dude. And here we go. We got some on the musket
in that game, but
yeah.
This is really good, man. I'm a little bit disappointed that Play Dead is gone though, because I thought that was a pretty unique ability, and I thought it was pretty funny. You could troll people with it pretty hard. It was a pretty funny ability and something good to use, but ultimately it didn't have any bearing in PvE, right? Like, when are you ever going to use a Play Dead ability in PvE? Like, that's PvP. Just not something you're going to. Why would you use it in PvE?
Well, if it's a feign death, it drops aggro. So
in PvE,
yeah.
Did it work that way?
I don't know if it did, but if it didn't, then it should have. But it's no longer in the game, I guess, so we don't have to worry about that. Because feign death, that was one of the big hunter abilities, and I think Rangers had it in most other games as well. And it was just the ability to drop aggro, right? If you pull too many, you can. So
you can just play dead and drop aggro,
right?
Which would make sense. But I think this is much better either way. I like the dot damage, the burning over time.
Yes.
This will just help increase the DPS of the musket at range, which I think is what you want. I like it a lot. One of the other things I'd like to see, kind of with the musket and with the bow both, is if we're gonna have to craft ammunition, I would like to see some sort of unique ammunition that we could craft for each of these weapons. I think that would help as well, and maybe we'll see that in the future. We don't have that in the patch notes. We didn't get that with the bow notes either.
Arrows.
Yeah, like ice arrows, or even like fire arrows or something like that, or some sort of penetrating bullets so that you can penetrate walls in sieges potentially and hit targets. I don't know, just some kind of unique ammunition like that. I know it's kind of a debatable topic as to whether or not New World, now with the direction they're taking, even needs ammunition anymore, because a lot of MMOs don't even have it, and now it's not a survival game, so it's more of a traditional MMO. So do you really need ammunition? Well, if there were unique reasons to have it, then I would say that's really cool. But it's kind of a debatable topic. But that's neither here nor there. This powder burn ability, I like it, man. I like the dot damage added to the musket. It's very good. It needed it.
Yes, it definitely needed some flavor in these abilities. Here is the one we were talking about earlier: shooter stance. Extended shooter stance extended shooter stance rotation angle to 180 degrees in order to widen the field of view while aiming. They removed shoot power. This allows us to increase the damage of power shot without worrying about it being too powerful when combined with shooter stance, and reduce the reload while in shooter stance to make it easier to fire off shots more quickly, reducing overall time needed to be in the stance. So these good changes here, Bordy, especially like they said, they kind of separated the power shot ability so they can kind of move that around a little bit.
Yeah, they just kind of adjusted shooter stance a little bit, and I think it's fine. All these changes seem to be okay. I like that you're not stuck in shooter stance as long as you were before. I think that's a nice change, a little bit of a buff to that ability. And then the rotation angle is pretty nice too, to have a wider field of view. Again, I didn't play the musket that much, so I didn't even go into shooter stance. I don't know what it was like before, but it seems like your range and your rotation angle was very limited, and that would suck if you're stuck in shooter stance and you can't move at all. That's rough. So I would imagine that increasing the rotation by 180 degrees is probably that seems like a pretty big buff to that ability.
Yeah, it definitely makes it more user friendly, I would say, because being stuck in it, I think before is like 90 degrees, and being stuck in that is not a good thing in PvE or PvP. So here are the traps that we were talking about, Bordy. Reduced the max amount of traps to 2. I believe the max was 3. In the preview event, they lowered the cooldown from 30 to 20. So essentially, I guess you're still able to put the same amount of traps out per minute. but just you can only have two out at a time. They reduce duration of the musket traps on the ground from 30 seconds to 20 seconds to account for the shorter cooldown and to encourage more dynamic use in combat. And then last note on the traps, they made it so traps are thrown by default instead of requiring an upgrade to throw them. So, Bordy, I guess, prior to this change, the default was just to lay it down at your feet. So now you can aim the trap and throw it out, which is a nice change.
Yeah, I think so. I'm glad they made that, because that seems to make a lot of sense to me. It's just kind of a wasted passive, I think, to have the ability to throw the traps. I think that's kind of a wasted ability whenever you move on down to the trap tree. So I'm glad that they just made that default instead of having a skill that required that.
Agreed. So here is the new ability that is replacing Hunter Vision. If you're not familiar with Hunter Vision, it allowed you to see targets more clearly. Running through like woods or hiding in grass and stuff like that. So now it's called Stopping Power. Stopping Power is an alternative shot to load in the musket that knocks back targets a few meters, allowing players to create some room between self and enemy if needed. So here's again another ability in the musketry that's going to allow you to create some space and hopefully enable some form of kiting for the musket.
Yeah, so is that going to be enough for the musket, though? Between stopping power and traps, is that going to be enough to allow you to kite people around if you want to be primary musket user?
You're going to have to probably also look at building your character around maybe light armor, allowing you to dodge roll, the longer distance. And now there are plenty of ways to get movement speed buffs in New World as well. So you're probably going to have to also, have that weapon on the back bar that allows you to increase your movement speed. So we will see if that is enough. Here's the last ability, Sticky Bomb. Sticky Bomb reduced the max sticky bomb count to 1, but reduced its cooldown, making it easier to immediately shoot after throwing a bomb, and helps balance out of damage. Allows us to help balance out the damage, as a single sticky bomb previously did not do much damage, but 2 bombs on the same target would do too much. So they reduced the knockback on sticky bomb explosions as well. So that, here we go again, another change, a little bit of a nerf to sticky bomb here. Overall, Bordy, I don't know if you have any comments on sticky bomb as an ability. I think it's, as far as abilities go, a little bit of a weak one.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to be an odd ability to have in the musketry to me. I never quite understood Sticky Bomb. I like the idea of it, but I've never quite understood it. It does seem like kind of a bit of a, I don't know, maybe a bit of a wasted slot there that they could put something else that helps you either kite a little bit better or do a little bit more damage or something to make the musket a little bit more powerful. I still think that unless the musket's doing an incredible amount of power or a lot of damage, whenever you have, because they did say that they're going to greatly reward accuracy by providing more benefits for headshots and consistently hitting targets. We don't know what that reward means just yet, or what greatly rewarding means and how much damage that's going to be. But unless that's a lot, I feel like the musket's still going to be kind of a low tier weapon in the game, even after all of these changes. I think all of these changes were pretty good. I wouldn't mind seeing them remove Sticky Bomb and add something else in its place. Sticky Bomb's a cool idea, and if somebody gets close to you, it's just another option to throw something at them and then knock them back a little bit so you can run away. But I think there may be something a little bit better they could do there. But overall, I think these are good changes for the musket. I still don't see it being just something that's going to be incredibly strong to use. It's probably going to be fun to use every now and then. Might be fun to use in sieges, invasions, that type of thing, where you can sit up on the ramparts and just shoot down, and then you can for sure use like your 3x zoom ultimate and try to get headshots in PvE. But for PvP situations, it's going to be tough for this to be a really good weapon, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the points you made are very valid. You look at the, having to keep up with your, highest tier ammunition is kind of a pain. That's involved with the musket. There isn't really any abilities now that are going to allow you to be able to kite people to get enough range to land shots efficiently or effectively. The skill tree overall doesn't seem very good either. You have your power shot and your shooter stance and stuff, but you know, shooter stance is going to do almost nothing against a melee character because they're, you know, being locked in a position is not a good idea. You know, you do have your power shot, but you know, I think it remains to be seen what the passives are. Like you said, that's going to allow players to benefit off of accuracy and landing consecutive shots, because that's going to be the tall tale of if the musket's going to be viable at all. Is if you can, you know, be rewarded for your accuracy with maybe a higher, I would say the musket needs to be the highest damage ranged weapon with accuracy.
Yeah, because you're supposed to be a long way away whenever you're using the musket as well, because it has a longer range than like the bow. So the bow is like a mid-range weapon, and I feel like the bow is going to be fairly strong. I feel like the bow is going to be a little bit easier to use. It's kind of mid-range. It has a lot of abilities that are kind of AoE-ish type of abilities. The musket doesn't really have a lot of that. It's very single target focused, and it's very you hit your target or you miss. There's not a lot of wiggle room there, so it's one of those things, man. We'll just have to wait and see what the damage numbers come out to be, because maybe it will end up being a really strong weapon as long as you're really accurate with the weapon.
Right.
But hopefully they adjust those numbers and get it right, and maybe they'll tweak these abilities a little bit more as we move along, and the musket will be a very good option. But as of right now, I personally don't see myself using it a whole lot.
No, I would love to use it. I'll probably use it for fun, but like you said, as far as meta goes, I think it's gonna probably still fall in a lower tier without some adjustments to damage, and they may have already made those. We haven't seen the passives yet, so maybe the musket is a better weapon, but on paper, with the changes to the abilities, it doesn't seem like they're going to make much of a difference as far as the strength of it.
Right. Yep.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Again, let us know in the comments below what weapon you want to see next for us to break down. Hit that sub button, the notification bell if you haven't already, for more New World content like this. Also, guys, go check out New World Fans. We just got a rework on the appearance of the website done. It's going to be a complete overhaul. It looks great. Taken did an amazing job, and we are working on guides in the background, trying to get everything ready for you guys for the beta event and of course launch, to give you all the New World information that you'd ever want as you're playing the game in the first days of live action, dude. I'm excited. New World launches in 4 months, and it seems like it's been forever, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah, me too, man. We're getting at least pretty close, and yes, once again, kudos to Taken. The website looks amazing, so you guys go check it out. It's really nice looking. Make sure you join our Discord and tell Taken how much you like the website. Yes,
but only a few of you. We don't want his head getting don't want his head getting too big. He already has nice hair, you know, so we don't need a big ego as well, right? But
yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it, and we will see you in the next video.